Welcome to the Healthy Christian Leader. I'm Dwight Habermehl. Come join me in the living room for some honest conversations. I'll be talking to guests about their journey with Christ through the joys, the challenges, and the messiness of leadership. There's always something to learn from someone's story, so let's get started. Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the Healthy Christian Leader. I'm Dwight Habermehl, and I have my guest with me today, Willy Reimer. Willy Reimer comes from the beautiful province of Alberta and via online. And Willy, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be with you again.
Yeah, I enjoy having you on the program. The times when we do, the things you share and the content you share is so good, and I'm just looking forward to our conversation today. But for those who you are new to, that may not know you, Willy, can you tell us a little bit about your story, your background, and what you're doing today, where you came from, and where you're going?
Sure, yeah. I grew up in Winnipeg, born into an immigrant family and good Mennonite, pietistic, legalistic community. Got, I'll say, really saved in Bible school when I was 18, and ended up going to university for economics, thought I was going to be in business. But a businessman from our church who I went to for work said to me, why don't you go do some ministry, and when you're done, I'll give you a job. And I thought, wow, that's a good deal. So I went to work for Youth for Christ in Winnipeg and never actually went back to him for a job. And did that for a while, ended up interning at a church in Saskatoon, which led into pastoral ministry. Got married in Saskatoon. We went off to seminary, which opened us and introduced us to church planting. Didn't know anything about it. This is the early 90s. Ended up in Calgary, where my wife and I started a church, 1994, and stayed 19 years, and which was great experience for us. Loved it. Then felt called to be executive director of Mennonite Brethren in Canada. So that gave me a real heart for churches across the country. Part of that was starting the C2C church planting network, which was denominationally based, but serving other denominations, which was a lot of fun and challenging. Did that for 6 years, ended up working in a multi-ethnic church in Vancouver, which was a whole education. About 75 nationalities in that church. It was maybe, I think, 15% Caucasian. So I stuck out like a sore thumb. Great time though, and then a couple of years ago moved into what I do now, which is executive director of 787 Collective, which is a ministry that works with ministry and marketplace leaders to catalyze collective impact for the nationwide generational spiritual transformation of Canada. So it's a highly altruistic venture.
Well, definitely, Willy. If I was asked to list 10 of the top leaders in Canada that I personally appreciate, you would definitely be on that list. And our topic today is actually about generosity and cheerful giving as a Christian leader. And one of the reasons you're on the top of that list for me personally is because what I saw you demonstrate as a denominational leader. And, so often generosity is spoken to the congregation as an expectation. But the expectation is that those in the pews would be generous to the mission of the church. And yet, what I watched demonstrated was generosity at the core value system of you as a leader, and then therefore also the denomination. As what I watched happen, I'll say our denomination because I was a part of the denomination at that time. Basically, you were launching a church planting movement for the denomination, and the Lord spoke to your heart, as I understand the story, and said, if you'll lower the denominational flag and raise the kingdom flag, I'll bless this. And you so generously put all of the energy and time, and it was generosity. It was risk, it was challenge, it was financial giving, to sow into the lives of what some in some circles would even think of as competition, when in reality we know there's no competition in the kingdom. It's a team sport working together. That's an amazing thing. Can you describe what generosity means to you and what it can include beyond finances?
Yeah, I think when I think of generosity, I think of people often think about money, it goes there quickly. And yet, I think it's a mindset. And I just, when I finally came to Christ, just overwhelmed by his goodness. Mm-hmm. We talk about grace, but trying to understand, wrap my head around, unmerited favor. So that principle really impacted me. And then even in Youth for Christ, people were giving to raise my salary. When I went to be intern in a church, some of them just kept giving. And that shocked me. And went to seminary, and people, we had anonymous gifts and things where people sustained us. And every year we had this gap between our income and our expenses, and I could never explain how that gap got met. Mm-hmm. I don't know how this happened, because on paper I can't find it. So, and then when we started the church, it was denominational money that supported us. And it really hit me that people who didn't know us had put money forward so this church could get off the ground. So the money that came in wasn't our money. It wasn't our church's money, and could not stop with us. Like sometimes with churches, like you said, the money stops with our local mission. I go, no, if people tithe for us to receive money, we got to tithe beyond ourselves. Like it's got to keep going. Mm-hmm. And the other piece that really hit me is my first missions trip in 1991. Took a bunch of college kids to Colombia to see our missionaries there. And there was no social net in Colombia, and you're walking down the street, and because you're from North America, you stick out, and people look at you and go, well, you're from North America, you must be wealthy compared to them. And you're inundated with people asking for help. And I said to the missionary, his name was Trevor, I said, Trevor, how do you handle this? And he said, well, I've learned that what I need to do is respond in obedience to what the Lord tells me to do. Beyond that, it's not my problem. Mm. And then, of course, being a good conservative, Mennonite boy, I go, well, what if they don't use that money well? Right? I want to control what they're going to do with the money so that I feel good about giving money. Mm-hmm. He goes, that's not my problem. That's between them and God. Mm. And it freed me up profoundly to start thinking about money, about everything. It's going, okay, it's God's. He's given it to me to manage, but it's not mine. And so if I'm obedient, the rest is his problem. Mm-hmm. And that started really working that to go, okay, why did God give us personally, corporately, these resources? Time, talent, dollars, facilities, like whatever it is, I know it's not for my benefit to stay there. Mm-hmm. Okay, Lord, what do you want to do? It's all yours. And I'm the beneficiary of this from other people. So I don't have the right to parcel it out based on my rules or desires. It's like, no, this is up to you, Lord. So what do you want to do? So that journey just slowly, incrementally, God kept softening my edges and and dealing with my control issues and my self-sufficiency issues and all those things.
Yeah, it's quite a journey, isn't it, to really get into that place where we truly understand that we are stewards of what is His, and that it is His, and it needs to be managed from a wise and a kingdom perspective on God's agenda. And it doesn't matter whether you're a business leader like I am, as one who belongs to the person of Jesus Christ. I am His, and I am totally, His domain. Well, then everything that I have is His as well. And if that's true in the marketplace, that's definitely true in the local church.
Yeah.
And it's a sobering thing. It's also a long journey because it involves a lot. Everything from faith and courage and commitment. What can change when we begin to put our resources towards God's agenda instead of our own?
Well, I think, it's an interesting tension. When we were seminary and church planting, life was really tight, and yet all my good stories of God showing up were from those years when it was tight. Mm-hmm. And there have been seasons where, you have a steady income. And I realized I have very few God stories in those seasons, unless I choose to really engage. And the tension between, I want the God stories, but I want extra change in my pocket.
Yeah.
Right? You want both ends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, okay, this is a challenge to walk through this. And there's two stories I'll tell you that really hit me. In 2008, I think it was, I was in 2009, I was in Mozambique. And we did some outreach in villages that it took us 8-9 hours to get to. Like the last part of the trail to the village was taking a little truck down a single goat track. And no doctor was ever coming to these villages. Like these were mud hut, zero resource. You spent your whole day trying to find, sustenance. And I realized, why were they born there and I'm born here? Mm-hmm. And I really had to wrestle. Like that was a bit of a existential crisis for me. And part of the things that came out of that, I go, okay, well, if I'm born here, there's certain rights and advantages I have that I am responsible for. Mm-hmm. And I got to think about that versus comparing myself to the guy down the street. Mm-hmm. So that was very helpful for me just to go, okay, there's a much bigger world, and I need to orient myself in light of that. So that was huge. The other thing is the scripture in where I think it's Agabus prophesies the famine coming in Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. And the people give generously for a prophesied famine, and then in the little note in your text it'll say, and it happened during the rule of so-and-so. And that act of generosity based on a prophetic word, not on a actual need that's presented, to me is one of the most profound scriptures on generosity. Because it demonstrates generosity is an act of obedience to the leading of the Lord. It is not based on need. It's not based on my surplus. It is not based on all these human factors. So the generosity question is, okay, God, you've given me X in every form of what that means. What does obedience look like? Mm. And if my generosity doesn't go through the obedience filter, if it goes through just good principles, I would argue that I'm actually not being generous because I'm not asking the obedience question.
That's excellent. I think of 2 Corinthians 9:7, where it says God loves a cheerful giver. And you've kind of touched on this, but why is it significant that the Bible highlights the attitude behind the giving?
Well, I think the cheerful giver, that just tells you that God gave cheerfully.
Mm-hmm.
And so it represents the heart of God. God doesn't give begrudgingly.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't send Christ begrudgingly. The heart of God is generosity.
Yeah, I think of, when I look at that scripture and all of the things you've shared in the past few moments, I think of a cheerful giver as a prepared heart for generosity. In
Mm-hmm.
other words, a heart that is properly prepared before the Lord, because they can give without begrudging. They know that they're in alignment with God's purpose and their calling, and they understand their role as steward of what is His.
Yeah.
They'd have to know their identity, know their calling, and understand the purpose of wealth and biblical principles to really be engaging from a cheerful perspective, just like the things you've shared. And this is so good. Willy, how can leaders inspire a healthy culture of generosity in their church or community without it being misconstrued as attempts for revenue generation?
Yeah, when I was pastoring, this would have come through multiple leaders who taught me this stuff. But generosity is a discipleship issue. It's not a resource issue.
Mm.
And especially in a capitalistic world, I think it is probably the biggest discipleship tool in our tool belt, because there's nothing we hold dear more than money and time. Money is self-determination. It's for some, it's identity, it's power, it's freedom. It's like all these things in the West that we hold dear.
Mm-hmm.
I used to joke when people get baptized. I used to tell them, you got to take your wallet with you. You can't hold it up out of the water. So what I learned was I need to teach generosity as a discipleship issue. So I would teach about it far away from the budget, far away from need. And some teaching was very practical. How do you budget? How do all those really practical steps. Other times it would be theological. It would be, what is the heart of God? Mm-hmm. and teaching about those things. So it's not ultimately a financial issue. It's ultimately a discipleship issue. What does it mean for all of my life to be the Lord's? Everything is submitted to Him. And now how does that get expressed in this area when it comes to generosity? And I think, back to the Corinthian passage, another synonym like for joy, Lord loves a joyful giver. I'd say you could use the word fun. Mm. Like I can just see, when Jesus was healing people, I can just see Him, talk to the disciples, go, oh, this is going to be fun. Mm. Like, you got to watch this, or freeing someone from a demon possession, or multiplying the food, or, generosity is one of the most fun things we can actually be involved in. Mm. Because you're blessing people with something. Mm-hmm. And our pride either makes it difficult for us to receive the blessing, right? Because we want to say, well, you bought lunch last time, I'm going to buy this time, because I got to feel I got to even things up. That's our pride. Mm-hmm. Or I'll give, but I have no need, right? Pride. Whereas giving and receiving and generosity is an act of humility either way, because I go, it's not mine, and I'm just receiving, so I should just say thank you. Mm. And may it spur me onto something else. And so you live in the mindset, and then the practices drop into that. Versus what are the habits, what's good saving, save 10%, give 10%, spend the rest, or whatever the thing might be. Those are functional, but we need to actually exhibit that heart of God and teach the heart of God. And the more we do that, then when you drop the practical into it, you're not betraying trust because you've been already creating the atmosphere for it. So now you're just applying that perspective to a specific situation, a budget, a need, a story, a crisis, whatever it might be.
How has the practice of generosity influenced your leadership and development and spiritual growth personally?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, we have so many stories of God's generosity to us over decades, and just so appreciative of how that's shaped us. At points, how humbling it's been. At points, how funny it's been. Just the connection that does to the body of Christ. So that has shaped me profoundly, and has created a sense of responsibility in the best sense of that word. Mm-hmm. I've been the beneficiary. We've been the beneficiary. We need to pass that on, and to teach that to our children, and now my grandchildren. And so that part's been very significant. It's also been incredibly humbling. I want control, which means I want to spend, my money when and how I want to, and yet to go, no, that's actually not what's best for me. Much as I feel the emotional tug of war. That can, even when God's provided so many times, I still feel the tug of war. Mm-hmm. And, there's been a change in my ministry now, and so I've got to do more fundraising than I had to in the past. And initially it was sort of that angst of, well, someone else was taking care of that, so I know my income is there. So now it's like, but my wife said, I only want to do a ministry that's only possible if God is in it. I'm like, okay, well, you got your wish. But now we got to trust him in a whole new way for our income. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure I want that part. I don't think we have, it's back to that, both and. So.
Yeah, somehow the Lord always makes things so practical, doesn't he?
I hate that.
What advice would you give to leaders who wish to grow in generosity? And maybe you already have.
Yeah. Well, I think they got to ask first and foremost, they got to ask the Lord, where are you asking me to, or us, a family, a couple, individual, to be generous? Mm-hmm. What does that mean for us? Because it might not be money. Mm-hmm. Way back when, I'm a car guy, I love cars. And way back when, I had to learn, the first test was be generous with your car, it's not yours. In other words, lend it out. It just about killed me the first time. I thought I was going to die. But I realized it's become an idol. So maybe the place to start is, Lord, where do you want me to be generous? Lord, what do you want me to learn about generosity? So maybe that's a biblical piece, theological piece, or maybe it's a practical piece. What are those habits that you want to bring into my life? Maybe it's, I've been reluctant to do this one, but I know places where people have said, we're going to share our financial story with our small group, and we're going to share, we're going to get them to pray about decisions over X amount of dollars before we make them. To go, we're going to submit this to the Lord. And Canadians are pretty, like some of, I've noticed an American philanthropist, they'll share more about what they're doing with their money and their giving. As Canadians, we're pretty quiet about this stuff.
Yeah, it goes against the cultural grain.
Oh yeah, you want to kill a party? Just say, hey, how much do you make?
Yeah.
Right? Crickets. You know. So I think it's stepping into that. Okay, Lord, where do you want to grow me? What's the invitation into generosity? What does that look like? And it could be time, it could be your home, it could, and maybe it's asking the question. I heard one speaker say, um, you know, you can have your house, but your house can't have you.
Mm.
You can have your money, but your money can't have you.
Mm.
So maybe it's asking the Lord, what has me? Because if it has you, it's an idol.
Mm.
And maybe it's asking that question. Okay, God, maybe that's the place to start. What are my idols around generosity? And how do you want to break those?
As always, Willy, a great conversation. We've got about 30 seconds left. What encouragement would you like to leave those who are listening today?
Yeah, I would really encourage people to ask the Lord, how do you want me to bless someone with generosity today?
Mm.
And enjoy the fun of doing that.
Willy Reimer, the Healthy Christian Leader, and we'll see you next time. Well, thanks for joining this conversation. I trust that you were encouraged and challenged by the stories and experiences that were shared today. Would you join us next week? You can find new episodes weekly in video form on the Aaron Ministries YouTube page and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. Aaron Ministries is an interdenominational network of friends in ministry with a mission to foster healthy Christian leadership. Check out our website, aaronministries.com, for more information and resources and on how you can donate to our ministry and potentially start a healthy Christian leader gathering in your area. Until we meet again, may you experience the Lord's blessing, grace, and peace. I'll see you next week.